Hello and welcome. This is a short rant about The Last Jedi from a feminist. Now, as a caveat, I must say, my brand of feminism may not mesh with the traditional feminism you've basically heard about everywhere. I do have a few rebellious ideas that I add into my feminism. The basis of my feminism is that males and females are both human beings. We are of the same species, sapiens. That is our species. We are not different that way. And I just think we need to treat each other with respect and not debase ourselves and treat each other just as sexual objects to be used by the other. So, with that said, let's move on and talk about The Last Jedi. Now, I can't say too much about Rey. I'm not a great big fan of her character. I don't know. Maybe she's a Mary Sue, maybe she isn't. That's not something I really want to debate, or something I even really care too much about right now. That's a subject for someone else's video, and I'm sure you'll find enough of them on YouTube. The problem is that I've always really loved Luke. Luke, to me, was the basis of Star Wars. It's his story. That's how I've always personally felt about it. Maybe someone else feels that it's more of someone else's story. Maybe it's Han Solo's story. Maybe it's Leia's story. Maybe it's Darth Vader's story. I don't know. For me, it's been Luke. I love Luke. I love watching his journey. He starts out just this kind of scrappy, whiny farm boy, and he ends up this wonderful, fully rounded out young man who is at peace with himself and has faced challenges down and survived. Great character. And I wanted to see The Last Jedi bring back our Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker and give him that moment to come back and be that character again. And what I feel that Rian Johnson and whoever else was responsible for this travesty did was they really destroyed Luke Skywalker. They actually literally destroyed him. They did it. They killed him. I never would have gone there in this film, I would never even killed him, period. I would have had him live. And I also wouldn't have stuck him out on some rock as some grumpy old codger, like waving a stick saying, "Get off my lawn," or whatever, and milking some crazy space cow for blue milk. I didn't need to know where that blue milk came from, okay? I really didn't need to know that. Really awkward and weird. Just plain weird. When he throws his lightsaber over his shoulder, ouch. That is just ouch. When he starts talking about like how the Jedi temple and the texts and everything and nothing matters and nothing means anything and it's all just so awful and it just takes away everything that was so awesome about Star Wars to begin with. All of the principles, the idea that the Force is a force that unites everything in the universe. And I know that Kathleen Kennedy, or someone else perhaps, has said, in quotes, the Force is female. And I don't agree with that. As a feminist, I can't say the Force is female because the Force is a force. It doesn't have a gender. It's a force. It's in everything. We've already been told this in the previous films. The Force exists and unites everything. It's in everything. It isn't a gender. It's just everything. It's something that's there. And I think that that's universal. That's something men, women, and everybody else in between can understand. The Force isn't male. The Force isn't female. The Force doesn't have a political agenda. It just is. And it can be used for good or it can be used for evil. It is something that just exists that people work with in that universe. And it's a very interesting topic. That's what I feel about that whole Force is female thing. I understand why they're doing that, but I can't say I agree with it. I mean, my position as a feminist that I am is not to make men knock them out and get rid of them all, or turn them into some vulnerable, subservient creatures or something. I mean, it's not my goal to do to them what they have done to women over the eons. That's not what I want. Two wrongs don't make a right. In the end, people as human beings should see each other as valuable human beings and have a basic level of decorum and respect for each other. Period. That's what it's all about. We don't see that today. And so we have these things called social justice warriors. Now, a lot of people are afraid of social justice warriors. A lot of people are angry with social justice warriors for how they enact what they're trying to do. And the goal of what they're trying to do is one thing, and the way they're trying to do it is another thing. I can't get into the intricacies of all of that because we are all individual people with our own experiences. We all will look at what a social justice warrior is differently. Not really completely sure what society at large is deeming it. Is it a slur? Is it a good thing to be called one? I don't know. In the Star Wars universe, though, an SJW is the worst of the worst. And I see that. Now, everyone's blaming Kathleen Kennedy for what happened to Star Wars. A lot of people are blaming Rian Johnson. A lot of people are calling Kathleen Kennedy a lot of sexist names. I can just say I don't believe that it ultimately lands on her as being solely responsible for this travesty. I'm not happy with what she did, but the problem here is that George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney. He is ultimately the only person we can look to and blame. Because I don't know Kathleen Kennedy. I've never met her. I've never talked to her. I have never in my life even had the tiniest little bit of interest in knowing her from day one. And she worked on a lot of films that I loved as a child, like E.T. She's had her hand in tons of things that I really enjoyed. I didn't care. She was just a name on a screen. So now we come to 2018. Kathleen Kennedy is being ripped pretty much to shreds. Why? Because she took Star Wars, and I can't agree with what she did at all. She took something that has existed for so long and is so important in the hearts of so many people and in the lives of so many people, and she tried to change it too drastically in a direction it didn't need to go. She hired Rian Johnson. I totally disagree with his view of everything he did. Wrong, wrong, wrong. So at the crux of the problem, though, I thought about it, and as much as I dislike what they did, I have to go back to the source. And the source of the whole problem is George Lucas. He created this. He owned it. He was the master and controller of it for decades, and he simply handed it away. And he's the one who's known Kathleen Kennedy for decades. I have not known her. You have not known her. He's the one who made that judgment call and said that it would be safe in her hands. A lot of people are saying, she lied to him. I think it's a little bit hard to know somebody for that long and not know what they're about or what they care about or what they're probably going to do with your property. But even if we give George that and say that Kathleen Kennedy suddenly did an about face and turned into something he'd never seen before in all of his years of knowing her, even if she pulled a fast one on him, he still sold it. You can't keep control of something and sell it. You can't do both of those things. He didn't want to keep control of it. If he had respected the fans and if he had loved the property, he would have kept it, right? He could have hired somebody to work on it and still kept it to himself and made sure that the fans were being listened to. He could have made sure that these horrible things that happened didn't happen. I mean, I cannot blame other people ultimately. I think they all had a hand in it, but ultimately the blame lies with George. George was the father of Star Wars, and he sold his baby away to other people who at that point he would know he could not control. You don't do that. Not if you love your property, not if you love those characters, not if you love the franchise, not if you love the fans who made it what it is, not if you respect those people. And I'm not saying we couldn't have females in this Star Wars universe. That's fine. But if you're going to put females in a franchise where there haven't been that many, don't beat people over the head with these characters. Don't put them in great big power positions where they talk down to everybody and are throwing their weight around like that. And I know that must sound horrible coming from a feminist, but at the same time, you have to know your audience, and you have to know your landscape, and you have to understand the story. The story is really focusing on one aspect of that universe. We had Mon Mothma. We had a few dancing girls in Jabba's palace. We had, eventually the prequels introduced us to some female Jedi. We really never got very much into anybody female besides Leia. Not in a major way. What can I really say? I hate the character of Rosie. I hate that character so much. She's unnecessary. She's absolutely 1000% unnecessary. No offense to the actor. It's not about the actor. It's not about her race. It's not about her looks. It's nothing like that. It's just your character is irrelevant and pointless and distracted Finn, in my opinion, from doing what I think he should have done. And personally, I would have loved it if Finn had gone running after Rey. I felt that was a motivation that made sense to me. Finn wants to make sure Rey is safe. I think he should have gone after her. Okay, but that's just my opinion. They sidetracked him with this whole Rosie story. Another character I hated, Benicio del Toro's character. Who the heck was that? I didn't want him there. I didn't want that whole side thing. Another problem, Laura Dern's character, whatever her name was. I didn't even bother to remember her name. Hate her character. Hate her character so much. I don't know why she's there. I don't know why she's attacking everybody and being a jerk to everybody. And let me talk about Poe Dameron for just a second. Love Poe Dameron. He's a great character. He is another, you got your hotshot flyboy, sort of like Maverick in Top Gun or something. He reminds me of that. He's a very attractive, vital, energetic guy. And he does what he does. He's sort of like the new Han Solo, like the rogue, the rebel, whatever. But he's still committed to his, to the rebellion. He is committed, right? He's a good guy. He's a good guy. And people complained a lot about Laura Dern's character totally just undermining him constantly. And it's like, I don't know. I really just felt that they wrote these characters so badly. They wrote them so badly. This didn't have to play out the way it did. It really didn't. And my husband and I agree. He's a huge Star Wars fan. He's got lots of memorabilia, toys, DVDs, everything. I mean, you name it. And we all agreed on this. This is just bad writing. Really bad writing. Bad direction. I don't know what they did to Luke. Why did they do this? They just destroyed him as who he was at the end of Return of the Jedi. They destroyed that person. They turned him into something that he isn't. And I don't accept this film as canon. I don't. That's not what happened to my Luke. That's not who my Luke became. No, that's not. It's just there's no way. I don't even like the whole idea of, oh look, Leia and Han have a baby and it goes to the dark side and eventually kills the dad. So cliche, it hurts. This is some piss poor writing. I'm sorry, but it is. This really has nothing to do, for me, with being a feminist. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. I want integrity in the story. I want characters who act in character with proper motivations that make logical sense. I don't need women shoved in there just to have them in there. You don't have to put women in these great giant positions of power just so they can decimate the males. That's not what feminism is about. Write a decent female character for a purpose with a point. You could have done this. They did kind of do it a little bit with Carrie's daughter, I believe, was in here. And in some ways you did see a couple of female pilots and stuff like that. That's kind of fine, Let's see representation of females in the galaxy. That's fine. But you don't need to go around decimating everybody. And you don't need to sidetrack. And you sure don't need to go with Benicio del Toro to some freaking casino or something. I don't even know what that was all about. So anyways, I reject The Last Jedi. I reject Rian Johnson. I reject Kathleen Kennedy's vision of what she thinks the Force is. I reject what they've done to this. But most of all, I will have to put the blame on George. George is the ultimate person who had control and handed it away. He ultimately is the one responsible for this happening. He should have known Kathleen better. And even if he thought he knew her and she suddenly changed, I still don't agree with him ever having sold it in the first place, because you can't control something once you hand it off to someone else. You'll never, ever, ever control it the way you could have if it was yours. So keep that in mind, folks. Ultimately, it's not the social justice warriors that are at fault. You can fault them for many things, but we have to look at George and we have to put the blame on his shoulders. We also need to reject The Last Jedi as canon. Period. That's it. That's all that has to be said about it. The Last Jedi is not canon. It's not. That's not what happened to Luke. That is not the destiny of these characters. I mean, add women in the future if you want to. Just have good reasons for what you do. Put logic in there. And I don't even like the idea of J.J. Abrams sticking his buddies and friends in there, or having any actor get to make great big decisions about what happens to the characters. Ultimately, that's not staying true to the story or the characters. That's just pandering to somebody's whims. So, ultimately, I'm not happy. I'm not happy with this whole Last Jedi thing. I don't agree with it. I don't accept it. But I also don't put full blame on Kathleen Kennedy or even on Rian Johnson, as much as I pretty much despise every kind of idea and what they've done to it. George, he has to be the one that is looked to for this travesty and the responsibility for maintaining this franchise in the hearts and minds of all of the fans that have really been there for decades should have been something he thought about before he handed it over so easily to people who would possibly destroy it.